Hello Internet, Seth Skorkowski, and today we're going to be taking a look at the Call of Cthulhu adventure, Transatlantic Terror, written by John Hook and published by Goodman Games for their Age of Cthulhu line. The module is short, playable in a single session. It's set in the 1920s, and the entire adventure occurs aboard a ship during an Atlantic crossing. Though it wouldn't be too difficult for keepers to change the details about the ship voyage, place it somewhere else if that's more suitable for the campaign. It doesn't have to be the exact crossing that the module says it is. One thing that I really do like about the adventure is that the player characters don't require having any mythos experience beforehand, and they don't have to belong to any specific occupation in order to be in the adventure, making it suitable for just about any group of investigators. It also comes with 5 pre-generated characters in case your players don't have characters of their own, or you can use the pre-generated characters as emergency backup characters if one of the normal PCs gets incapacitated or killed during the course of the adventure. It has a lot of potential for combat and some great opportunities for roleplay. My players and I had a lot of fun with this adventure, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to give you my criticisms and my suggestions as a game master who has successfully run this adventure.
Hey, and I'm Jack the NPC. I'm going to give this one to you from a player's side of things. Providing we don't hit an iceberg and all die first.
Dude, I'll promise you that there are no icebergs.
Yeah, that's what they always tell you. But you know what? I have watched that James Cameron film 37 times. And every single time, they always assure Rose that there is no way that they're going to hit an iceberg. But you know what? They always do. That is a 100% iceberg to ship ratio.
That doesn't even... Never mind. Anyway, from this point forward, there will be spoilers. So any players in the audience, if you want to experience this adventure, please stop now. But send your game master this way to see if Transatlantic Terror might be a right fit for your group. Okay, keepers, let's get to work. The entire adventure is set aboard the RMS Adriatic, a smaller sister ship to the Titanic. The PCs are all going to be first-class passengers on an 8-day voyage that goes from New York to Belfast and then one more day to get them to Liverpool. Why the PCs are on the ship isn't explained, so the keepers are going to need to figure that out as to why they're even on the ship. One idea is that the investigators are simply doing an Atlantic crossing on their way to a different adventure, such as the auction, which is set in Austria, or Madness in London Town, which is set in London. I've also done reviews for both of those adventures as well, so you can check those out. While the scenario is suitable for characters of any occupation or profession, the only hitch is that they need to be traveling first class.
First class? Yeah, my credit's just a 30, and that's just a little bit more than I can afford. You guys got like a payment plan or something?
There are a few ways around this hurdle. If the player characters are traveling for a specific job or adventure, you can have their employer be the one that flips the bill for their ship's passage and their employer gets them first-class tickets. Or if they're doing something like Madness in London Town, where they're going to be guests of the British Museum, you could just simply have the British Museum pay for their tickets, and those tickets are all going to be first-class tickets. Or maybe you can have the player characters are traveling with a wealthy NPC as some sort of companions or guests for a voyage, and they procured the tickets. Or you can just say that they had a rich friend that had some tickets, and now the rich friend can't go, and they gave or sold the tickets to the player characters at a really good price.
Or you could go the route of that one James Cameron film, the one whose name I'm still not going to utter here. The one where Leonardo DiCaprio won his ship tickets through a poker game.
How they get the first-class tickets doesn't actually matter, but I will say that from my own experience, it can be a lot of fun to have the investigators not be rich themselves, but find themselves in the company of the fantastically wealthy. Once they arrive, we're going to have this handy little map of the upper 2 decks. Then let them enjoy the various amenities that first-class guests can experience.
And the best amenity about being on a ship during the Prohibition period is once that ship crossed that 3-mile limit into international waters, the champagne corks start a-poppin'.
Also, this is a good time for the players to get to meet the different NPC personalities that are traveling on the ship with them. For my game, since the players had their own characters, I went ahead and turned the pre-generated characters into NPC personalities that we could have some fun role-playing with. NPCs with such memorable names such as Rockefeller, or Kennedy, or Vanderbilt.
Vanderbilt? Holy crap, I hated that guy, the snooty jerk. I tell you, I hated that guy more than I hated the freaking monsters.
Speaking of monsters, there are 3 serpent people who are traveling on the ship with them because they're in human disguises. 1 is a guest, and 2 is newly hired ship's staff. Their plan is to kill and steal the likeness of Joseph Taft, the nephew of former President Taft. The adventure begins on the 2nd evening on the ship. The PCs are going to be escorted into the dining room by one of the serpent people who's disguised as one of the stewards. The module says that if the player characters ask to be seated at the captain's table, the steward is going to do so without any hesitation at all, which is going to show everyone that the steward is new and unfamiliar with all the protocol that they normally should know. But because this adventure works best if the player characters A, get the hint that the steward is new, and B, are sitting at the captain's table on the 2nd evening, I say that you don't leave this up to chance or the possibility that the player characters might not ask to be seated at the captain's table. So just have the steward, escort them in, have them look confused, let the players roll some psychology checks to kind of see that confusion on his face of what is he supposed to do now, and then have the steward just kind of walk up to the captain's table and set the PCs down and then just walk away like that's what he was supposed to do. Then, once the captain and the captain's guests arrive, there's going to be this little social awkwardness, but the captain's going to be too polite to tell them to leave, and now the PCs have a front row seat for the adventure to come. During the celebration of an engagement announcement, the serpent people are going to slip a control serum, into Taft's drink. The serpent person who's posing as Joanna Osterman is then going to suggest that Taft maybe go to bed because he's had a little bit to drink, which he's going to promptly do because he's under the serpent people's control. Now, while it is possible that one of the PCs might intervene here and stop the whole plan from even happening, it's extremely unlikely to happen. Once Taft leaves the room, the serpent people are going to escort him down to the ship's hold where they are going to kill him. This is the trickiest part of the entire adventure to do, and this is where it could possibly go off the rails for you. So what you need to do is show the interaction that Taft suddenly seems to get a little bit drunk, and then Osterman tells him to leave, or that's a good idea that he leave, and that one of the stewards then escort him out of the room. So what I suggest that you do is you mix all of this in with all sorts of other details going on. That way it sort of blends into the background. It doesn't just stick out like some sort of burning flare that this is the only thing that you mentioned. Mention several other things and then just kind of mix that in there. And then later, when the player characters, they're thinking back on what happened that night, they can remember that and be all like, oh my God, it was in front of me the whole time. Once everything has been set in motion, you then have several days remaining on the voyage for the players to begin noticing all the other strange goings-on, one of which being Taft's absence for the rest of the game. Play a lot of this like normal. One thing I suggest is you let the PCs try some of the skeet shooting out. Have one of the other guests maybe challenge them to a friendly game.
Yeah, skeet shooting. Let me tell you how my skeet shooting went. So there I am, I'm hanging out in the spa, and I meet Vanderbilt, and he seems like a nice enough guy, and he's all like, hey Jack, would you like to try some skeet shooting with me? And I'm all like, yeah, sure, let's try some skeet shooting. So there we are, we're up on the deck, everybody's watching, and I'm going to impress everybody with my shotgun skills, right? But then I fumble my roll, and I drop my shotgun, and it falls off the deck, and it lands 2 decks below. It doesn't go off the ship, it doesn't hurt anybody, just a drop shotgun is all. But Vanderbilt thinks that's the funniest thing he's ever seen. So anytime he sees me after that, I'm just walking along the hall, minding my own business, and all of a sudden I hear this, hey Jack, you drop any shotguns lately? Stupid jerk.
The skeet shooting is going to let the player characters get familiar with the fact that yes, there are shotguns on board, and let them get to see exactly where those shotguns are stored. This is important to know because the player characters probably do not have any firearms with them. Because this ship is going to be destined to the UK, the PCs probably aren't going to be bringing the firearms along because, according to the investigator's weapon guide, even foreigners can't apply for a firearms license in the UK. So, if they aren't actually UK citizens and just happen to have their firearms already with them, they are extremely unlikely to be able to get any firearms into the country and therefore probably wouldn't have brought them. Probably give them a law check before they leave just to make sure that they know that, yeah, those are probably going to get confiscated at the border if they even try it. So the shotguns aboard the ship are probably going to be the main access that the player characters are going to have for any firearms on this adventure, providing, of course, that the player characters either steal them or they convince one of the more influential NPCs on the ship, such as the ship's detective, to give them access to the firearms. That way they don't have to go out and steal them. Eventually, several mysterious things are going to start happening. There are a lot more obvious clues for the PCs to pick up on. One guest is going to accuse Miss Osterman of being an imposter, and the PCs might notice that one of the other stewards is missing, and he's been conveniently missing for the exact same time that Taft went missing. One of the more obvious of these clues is that one evening, the second Serpent Person steward is going to hurl a weighted bundle off the side of the ship. Hopefully the PC's suspicions have been raised enough, that way they think this is unusual, and they're going to go ahead and try to follow him, and that's going to lead them down to the cargo hold. Once they reach the hold, they are going to encounter a horrific sight. Behind a car is Taft, dead, naked, and in the process of being devoured by a serpent person. This is likely going to result in a combat with one of the other serpent people, because the serpent people always have one stationed there as guard, while the other is going through the very long task of slowly devouring a human corpse. Hopefully the PCs are going to survive this encounter. Hopefully their sanity is going to survive this encounter, because this is definitely going to cost them a few sanity points. Once they go through the combat and once they've defeated the serpent people, there's going to be the next issue, which is the bodies. The module doesn't address this, but seriously, what's going to happen when somebody on the ship sees these monsters and possibly the naked, dead Taft, with one of the creature's mouths stretched around it, and Taft is half digested? What are they going to do? What's going to happen to this ship? So what I suggest is if the captain or the ship's detective are notified about this, they might make the call to dispose of these bodies and not let anybody know about it, maybe to prevent some sort of panic, or maybe in their own bout of madness, they might decide that that's exactly what the White Star Company wants them to do, because they don't want the news to get out that the White Star's customers are being, killed and eaten by monsters, so they think that they're doing the right thing by their employer by covering it up. But you will need to put some thought into what's going to happen if people suddenly find out there's serpent people on board if the PCs start killing them. For my game, I was lucky. My player characters, quietly dumped them off the side of the ship, and they all ended just being missing people aboard the ship, and no one was the wiser. One trick is that the PCs might not figure out that there are 3 serpent people on board. When they go down to the hold, they're going to find the one that's devouring Taft and the one that is protecting Taft, but that other one might not be there, so the PCs might not realize that, yep, there's a third one to lose. So there are other clues that are available to tip them off about this, but the one posing as Miss Osterman is the most likely one that's going to slip through their fingers if they don't figure it out. If they do suspect her, and then they break into her room, they're going to discover several vials of the control serum. For my game, I also went ahead and added some of the Serpent Person data plates, one for each of the different spells that the Serpent people all knew. They're really cool artifacts, they have a nice little mythos thing, but the PCs, of course, are going to need to be able to read the Serpent Person language to even get any use out of them. So they're mostly just kind of a mood thing, just so the PCs can feel like they found a valuable artifact, more than it's going to be about giving them some super magical spells that they're going to have forever now. Overall, we had a lot of fun with the Transatlantic Terror. We played it over the course of 3 hours. It could have actually gone a lot faster than that, but we were spending a lot of time role-playing and having some fun with it.
And with that big jerk Vanderbilt, I honestly considered framing him for the missing people and the murders. I'm not kidding either.
One thing that I do suggest is that before you begin the game, keepers should probably assign the rooms. Which room is going to be Taft's? Which room is going to be Miss Osterman's? Where are the PCs staying? Are there enough PCs that there's going to be more than one room that the player characters are staying in? Decide all this beforehand. That way, during the game, you don't have to waste any of your brain power doing all the stuff you could have done before the game, and now you can just focus solely on improvising whatever the player characters are going to throw your direction. I also want to mention that while I do find the art great, and as much as they actually managed to cram into such a tiny module, the depictions of the serpent people look more like crocodile men or something than the normal Call of Cthulhu serpent people. It's a tiny gripe, I know, but this is a review, so I might as well mention it. The last thing is that in the back, where the pre-generated characters and the NPCs are all listed, there are 2 NPCs that are out of place that appear in the pre-generated character section. No big deal, but just be aware of it, that way it doesn't cause any confusion for you. The PDF for the module is available at DriveThruRPG. It's only $4 and definitely worth the price. Links below. I strongly suggest that you check it out.
Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a like. If you want to see some of our other reviews and other videos, just hit that subscribe button. Till next time, players, you have a great day. Hey, Jack, you drop any shotguns lately?